So, hello, John. Dr. John Demartini, my friend, my mentor, and prolific author. It's a pleasure to be here speaking with you about one of my favorite books of all time.
Oh, thank you.
It's for anyone who's not seen the book, here's a copy of it. It's called The Values Factor. And I just, before we get into the interview, just say to people, the reason it's so important to me, about 14 years ago, a client of mine said, there's this guy I heard speak last night and he's speaking again tonight and you need to go and hear him. And I said, why is that? And my client said, well, I know you're really, really interested in values. And at the time I'd been going around the world working with some of the really famous world leaders in personal and business transformation and trying to get under the hood of values and how they worked. And I said to my client in one conversation that things just didn't add up for me. It wasn't, and I actually told my client about this event I went to where the person at the front of the audience was talking about what are your highest values? And these things like honesty and integrity and all these things were coming up. And I said to my client, look, this just doesn't ring true. It doesn't, well, everyone's putting their hand up. How does that differ? You know, what good is that in terms of teaching you who you are? And both from a business and an individual perspective. And so my client, on his recommendation, I said, but hang on, I looked at the event, it said you were talking on health. And my client said, don't worry about that. He covers values, whatever he's talking about. So I said, great, I'll go along. And I went along and I was absolutely spellbound, and you did cover values early on in the talk. And it was like a massive, massive aha. After years of research and following different people, I remember saying in my head, hallelujah, it makes sense. At last, it makes sense. And I stayed for the talk. I actually signed up immediately to do your breakthrough experience, which I attended with my wife. And that was very, very profound, and got to do values in even more detail there. So that's my introduction to you. And the thing I would add to this interview at the beginning is, you know, as you can see behind me, I do books, I review books, I teach about books, and I've read a lot of books, to say the least. And my number one favorite book of all time was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, because that was profound in awakening me. And but by a long distance, the number two book of all time for me is this book here. And I remember when you just shortly after you published it, and I read it, and I spoke to Clarissa, and I said, Clarissa, this is the best book John's ever written. It's so profound. So first of all, thank you for writing it. And now I'm going to ask you some questions about it.
Fine, that's great.
Okay, great. So so one of the things about values, if you can explain to people listening, I mentioned about honesty, integrity, and people associate those as being values. Can you explain why that's a bit of a smokescreen to what values really are?
Okay, I'll do what I can on this from a different story base. I was speaking in South Africa to maybe 5,000 people, and I was speaking at a Success Summit conference, multi-speaker event. Richard Branson, myself, Greg Secker, a bunch of people. And I asked the audience, how many of you would love to be financially independent, where your passive income exceeds your active income, and you work because you love to, not because you have to? And 100% of the room put their hands up immediately, some with two hands, some double hands. And then I said, how many of you have achieved this state, have financial independence where your passive income exceeds your active income? And all but 7 hands went down. 7 hands out of 5,000 people. And I said, now, just imagine for a second, I'm going to give you 10 million US dollars, which in that time was around 120 million Rand, because it's about 12 to 1 Rand at the time. That's their currency. I said, I want you to imagine you receive this. You have this money, and you have 60 seconds to write down the 10 things you would do if you received this money right this minute. So write these 10 things down. You got literally 60 seconds to write them. So get ready to write fast. What would you do if I handed you 10 million US, 120 million Rands right now? What would you do with that money? On your mark, get set, go. And they quickly wrote what they would do. They're giggling and laughing and quickly running. I said, now, turn that sheet of paper over to the individual to your left and have them calculate how much money of that money is left in the form of assets earning you money versus how much was spent on consumables that depreciated. And the range was between 20 and 80% of the money in 60 seconds had been converted into assets that were paying them passively to consumables that depreciated in value, which showed that they had a value on buying immediate gratifying things that went down in value that were consumables and liabilities, instead of continually taking the money and investing it in assets that would accumulate and give them passive income. And when they saw their own in their hands, that 20 to 80% of it was wiped out in 1 minute, I said, as long as you have a value on immediate gratifying consumables that are other people's brands that make you feel important through other people's brands, and not buying assets that actually work for you and put money in your pocket, then financial independence will be a pipe dream. I said, because what you value dictates how you spend your money. And the hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny. Now, many people thought, again, like yourself, values are things like integrity and truth and things like that. But value is what you value and what's worth something to you. The study of that is called axiology, the study of values and worth. So many people have injected social idealisms about what they think it should be, ought to be, supposed to be, got to be, have to be, must be, need to be, instead of looking at what their life actually demonstrates, what their decisions show them is really valuable to them. So I found that so many people had these cliche ideals about what they think their values were that had nothing to do with how they live their life. And I wanted to discern, because I've been studying values over 42 years now, I wanted to discern and come up with a way of looking at what your life is really demonstrating. Because your life speaks louder than your words, and your actions speak louder than your ideals. What are you actually doing on a daily basis? Because every decision you make is based on what you believe will give you the greatest advantage over disadvantage, greatest reward over risk at any moment in time, based on the options and perceptions that you're accumulating. So I had to get clear about what is a way of discerning what is really valuable to somebody. So I came up with 13 value determinants that I felt were more objective. They gave me a greater understanding of what the authentic individual is about, instead of the idealisms that they think they should be doing. There's a difference between what you live and what you think you should be living. There's a moral hypocrisy that you may be subordinating to, but I'm interested in what you're actually living. So I came up with these 13 value determinants to determine what is really valuable in their life. Because if you perceive you don't have a relationship, you look for a relationship. Perceive you don't have money, you look for money. Perceive you don't have business clients, you look for business clients. Whatever you perceive is most missing and void becomes most valuable. Just as Aristotle said way back in the beginning of the early Greek philosophers. So I look at how an individual fills their space. Because just like a child in a crib, if you throw something in the crib that the child wants, it will explore it, look at it, grab it, put it in its mouth, experience it, and it'll keep it there and hold it in the crib. If it doesn't want it, it's not valuable to the child, it'll kick it out, cry, take it away. So we can determine how we fill our space and get an idea of what people value. Because things that are really valuable, they keep close to them. And things that they don't value, keep away. A wedding ring, for instance, doesn't go too far from the finger. It'll stay on the finger 24 hours a day, or it'll be close and it'll be put back on that finger because it's valuable to it. So whatever is valuable, you fill your space with. So space is a really good indicator of what you value most. So what exactly is it you keep in your intimate, which is 1.5 feet, and personal, which is about 4 feet, space most consistently in your life? Most people today have a computer or a cell phone. That's one of the most valuable things they have in their life. They won't go anywhere without it. And if a fire occurred, that's what they would grab. Sometimes more than their own children. So if they're teens. So what's interesting is you look at what you fill your space with. Then you look at what you spend your time on. You make time, find time, and spend time on things that are really, really, really valuable to you. And you run out of time and don't want to make time and don't take time for things that aren't. And you find a way of dodging things that aren't important and try to get to the things that are. So you look at how you spend your time and be honest objectively of what is your time being spent over a 3-month period. Where is most of your time being spent? It tells you what you value. And if you say, well, I don't like my work, but I do work and I got to go to work. No, you're going to work because it's providing you a value. It may be financial security and you haven't found an alternative way of making more money. So you're using that pathway to get what you're wanting, which is valuable to you. Oh, that's why I'm working every day. But look at how you spend your time. Then look at what energizes you. Because things that are really valuable to you bring your energy up. And when you're doing things that are low on your values, it drains you. A young boy who loves his video games can do it till 2 a.m. But you tell him to do his chores. He won't stay till 2 a.m. doing his chores. He'll be tired and fall asleep and give up. So you look at what you spend, what gives you energy and raises your energy level, and you always have energy for. That tells you what you value. And by the way, each of these 3 value determinants will point in the same direction. The same answers will keep reiterating. Then you look at what you spend your money on. You find money, make money, and spend money on things that are really valuable to you. So look at your disbursements out of your bank account and your checking account, and I assure you that money is going to go to what you value. And if it's all going to a mortgage, you must value something that that house represents. I've sold all my homes. I've only got my ship today, and I live in hotels, so I don't really have a need for a home. At one point when I had young kids, that was important, but I don't have that today. They're grown up. So whatever you value is where your money goes. You find money, make money, and spend money on things that are valuable. So if you go to space, time, energy, and money, those are the first 4 value determinants. I call it the STEM. They're the cornerstone of what you value most. Then I go to another one. Where are you most ordered and organized? Because things that are very high in your values, you bring order and organization to. You have a high value on books. Look how organized those books are. Look at all the knowledge you've had that's organized in your life, all the things you studied. That's valuable to you. Same for me. So where are you most ordered and organized is another value determinant. And it'll be in the same direction as STEM. Then you go to the next one, which is where you're most disciplined spontaneously, and you're most reliable, and you're focused, and nobody has to remind you to do it. You just do it. Nobody has to remind me to research and teach. I'm teaching every single day, 7 days a week, and I'm learning in between. Yeah. I'm literally editing or writing or reading or doing something every day. So look at what you spontaneously do. That tells you what you value. And what's interesting is it may not be what you fantasized it was. That was an idealism. Now, when you look at those 6, you got the first 6, and they're already going to point very clearly to certain things that are really valuable. And it won't be it'll be so obvious. You won't miss it if you look honestly. If you honestly answer that. The next one is, what do you think about how you would love your life to be that is showing evidence of coming true? Many people have fantasies about what they want, but there's no evidence. Or many people have nightmares about what they don't want, and they think that that's what's showing up in their life because they're going after fantasies. But I'm interested in, what are you thinking about how you would really love your life to be that is actually showing evidence and you're making progress of bringing that into reality? I love traveling the world teaching. I have evidence of it coming true. I also fantasize about being, Hugh Hefner and international sex symbol, but none of that's come true. So I can't put that down because there's no evidence of that. There's more like a celibate monk. So the reality is that I can't put down what shows no evidence. I have to put down what's real. And the next one is, what are you visualizing about how you would love your life that also shows evidence of coming true? And the next one is, what are you internally dialoguing to yourself about how you would love your life to be that shows evidence of coming true? Because these are different areas of the brain. One's the occipital region for vision, one's the frontal parietal region for thought, and the temporal region for audio. So I'm looking at how the brain is prioritizing and showing evidence. Because something's really valuable, you make decisions, you keep making it happen. I have loved learning. You love learning. There's evidence that you've been studying and learning and devouring it. You go to seminars, you learn some things, you talk, you interview, you love learning. Your evidence shows that. So you got to look at what your life gives evidence of, not what you fantasize about. The next one is, what is it you want to converse with other people about? People come up to you and say, how's your investments? How's your business? How's your kids? How's your health? How's your golf game? They're wanting to engage in a conversation about what they value most. So look at what you keep wanting to converse about. And if you get to talk about it, you'll talk all night. I've been to parties, social events, where people are talking about things that I'm not inspired by. And I'm looking at my time to go. I'm thinking, it's time to go. And I'm about to leave, and it's a little boring. And all of a sudden, somebody comes up to me and starts a conversation about what I'm interested in. And now I'm ready to stay there all night and talk to 2 in the morning. Because when you're conversing about what it is you really love, you don't notice time. So you look at, what do you want to converse about most? That gives you a great indication of what you really value. And the next one is, what inspires you and brings a tear of inspiration or a chill up the spine? Or what's common to the people who inspire you that are great achievers of something that really inspire you? If I look at the people who've inspired me most, it's been the great thinkers, the Nobel Prize winners, the people who've contributed on the planet, original ideas in any field. I obviously love learning and teaching. And so the people who've been the great minds and great teachers and things like that, I've been devouring that piece of work. They inspire me, reading their lives, their biographies, watching them on YouTube. So you look carefully at what is it that inspires you and what's common that people inspire. It gives you a great indication. And mine all line up. It's the same answer, repeating, keeps coming up the same answer. The next one is, what are the most consistent and persistent goals that you have, that you have persevered and you have evidence and they're coming true? They may not be totally complete, but there's definitely progress and evidence that it's manifested. Because people say, well, I want to be financially independent. If there's no evidence of savings and investments and progressive growing wealth, then it's not true. You have immediate gratification showing evidence, and you keep wanting to buy things. So many people actually fantasize that they want to be financially independent, but they have no evidence whatsoever. They're in debt, they're living month to month, and they buy things, they fill up a house of clutter. 25% of their entire home is filled with closets of clutter and depreciating things instead of actually assets. You know, you could rent that closet out to somebody probably. If you really had value on money, you'd be renting the closet to a cat or something, you know. But the point is, what does your life demonstrate that you've had as a goal that's coming true? And the last one is, what is it you can't wait to learn? What do you want to study? What do you want to read about? What are you watching on YouTube? What videos you're paying attention to? What seminars you are listening to? Who you want to learn from? What's common to it? What do you love learning? Mine's on human behavior. I've been studying it for almost 48 years. November will be 48 years I've been focused on that topic. So if I look carefully at what all those value determinants, there's 13 of them, and I answer 3 answers, the top 3 answers for each. So there's 39 answers. And then I go through and I collate all those answers and look at which of those answers repeated most, second most, and third most. It'll give me an idea of what's really, really important to my life and what my life is demonstrating. And I've been doing that for thousands of people, thousands. I have it on my website, complimentary free on drdemartini.com, to help people do it so they can have that. And we've been doing it a long time. And truth and integrity and honesty aren't on those lists. Now, being truthful to yourself, being integral and live by what you do discover as your highest value, and having that integrity to do that is a common denominator that everybody would like to do, and therefore is wise, but that's not what actually shows up on the list. What shows up on the list many times is dedication to the children, if you're a mother, dedication to growing an entrepreneurial business, if it's business, a social cause, if it's social, learning and education and developing an academic understanding, if it's, intellectual, spiritual quest, it may be contribution spiritually, it may be building for friggin' wealth. Some people have that as a high value. It could be raising kids, as I said. It could be any of those areas of life that we tend to include in our life. So I'm interested in what your life demonstrates, not what you think, not what you fantasize about, not what you think it should be, not what society conforms and expects, not what mores and conventions and traditions project onto you. I'm interested in you. And the most authentic you is that highest value, that number one value your identity revolves around, your purpose revolves around, and your maximum epistemological learning revolves around it. And that's who you are. That's an expression. And it does change through time. And so it's wise to keep current and update the value determination to make sure you're keeping current with what's really meaningful to you in your life. Because you could have children and it can change. You could have a business, a coronavirus, a Saint coronavirus could come and you could change. Your values can change in your life, and therefore your purpose in life can change too.
That's fantastic. And one of the things that I find interesting, I've had hundreds of my clients do your values elicitation questions, and obviously it's available on your website for free, which I think is fantastic. And when people do them, I think one of the things that comes up for people is the realization that one of the conflicts they've got going on is they're trying to live somebody else's values, like their parents or someone else. That's a really common theme I found. And for me, all of my work is about being authentic. So that's why values is such an important part of what I do. And I've learned so much from you there. Can you give some examples of some of the most typical ones that come up where people are trying to be somebody else?
Yep. Albert Einstein said something that was simple but profound, like he did. If you're a cat and you're expecting to swim like a fish, you'll beat yourself up. If you're a fish expecting to climb a tree like a cat, you'll beat yourself up. But if you honor who you are and be number one at being you, instead of being two at somebody else, you maximize your potential. What happens is, I want you to imagine this for a second. And I'm sure somewhere in your life, you've had a moment earlier in your life where you might have had an infatuation with a pretty girl.
Once or twice.
Yeah. Or if you're a woman out there, you might have had a fantasy about a guy, or a guy-guy, girl-girl combination, whatever it is that turns you on. Today, you got to put the whole spectrum in there because it's a whole blend in there. But whatever it is, you've probably been infatuated with somebody. And when you're infatuated with somebody, you tend to put them up on a pedestal. And you tend to minimize you relative to them. And as a result of it, if you put them up, and you tend to get a dopamine high, a serotonin rush, enkephalons and endorphins, vasopressin, oxytocin, they all go up, and they get the bonding compounds, pleasure compounds, fantasy compounds, and drawn impulse to be with them. When you do, anything that you get infatuated with, you fear the loss of. And so because you get a fear of the loss of it, like the fear of loss of prey, because it represents prey. It's interesting, prey is food. Yeah. And we have a mouth with a tongue that has sugar receptors on the tip. And so when we want to eat something, we want to consume it, we want to lick it and consume it, taste it, etc. When you're infatuated with somebody, you also do that. You want to put your tongue on them, excuse the expression. And you call them sweetheart and sweetie pie and cupcake and sweetie and heart, whatever it is, sugar, honey bunny. There's all the sugar terms when you're infatuated because you want to consume them. And you also fear the loss of them. Because if all of a sudden somebody else took them, you'd be jealous while you're highly infatuated. Only while you're infatuated do you fear their loss. Well, as long as you fear their loss, and you put them on a pedestal, it's only because you're too humble to admit that what you see in them, you have. You think they have something you don't have. You think they're going to offer you something you don't have. Now, whether that's true or not in your mind, doesn't matter. If you perceive they have something you don't, you're going to want to consume it.
Yeah.
So as a result of it, you fear its loss, and you put it on a pedestal, and you minimize yourself because you're too humble to admit what you see in them is inside you. And anytime you put yourself below them, values go from those who have the most power in society to those that have the least power. So you devalue yourself, you overvalue them, and you inject their values into your life. And what happens is that you start doing things, strange things that you never do in order to be with them. I have a classical example. When I was 20, my day consisted of reading books on physics, chemistry, organic chemistry, medicine, pre-med stuff. I was a microbiologist. I was a scientist. And this girl comes into my microbiology class that was stunning. She was a beautiful Spanish model. She had perfume that you could smell 20 feet away. And she came and sat right in front of me. And I was completely distracted. Instead of studying microbiology from Dr. Jurczyk, I wanted to go and investigate her internal microbiome, if that makes sense. So I was, salivating like the Pavlov dog. And I started to converse with her and walked out with her, and I became her boyfriend. I scored. Cool dude. She was stunning. She was a beautiful girl. I was totally enamored. I had her picture in front of me almost all day long. I was distracted by it. And I knew I was infatuated by my behavior. My normal day consisted of studying science. But all of a sudden, I'm now sacrificing what's important to me, science, to now go and do pom-pom dancing, because she was a Kilgore Rangerette trainer and taught girls how to do halftime entertainment at football games. So I was doing pom-pom dancing, a scientist doing pom-pom dancing. So I was doing things that I would never do.
I would love to have a picture of that, John.
Oh, it was out of character. But I was afraid of losing her because I was so infatuated with her. I didn't want to not do what she wanted to do. So I was sacrificing what was important to me to be with her and doing things that I didn't normally do. Now, the first week I did it, no problem. I thought it was a little ridiculous. I felt a little out, but being around all that estrogen was pretty enticing. But about 2 weeks in, I'm starting to wear down on it. I'm starting to build up a little bit of angst because I'm not studying. By the third week, I'm thinking, I got a test. I need to get focused on my test. And I started coming up with excuses why I couldn't go and be with her at the pom-pom dancing. And I was starting to go, I feel like I'm not able to be me, and I'm afraid to be me around her. Because if all of a sudden I've got her on this pedestal, she's more important than me, and I'm minimizing me to be with her and injecting her values and trying to be somebody I'm not. And anytime I inject the values of other people, Freud called that the injection of authoritative values from others is what he called the superego. And it comes in as an internal moralizer about how we should be instead of who we are. And now we have an internal conflict. And I had an internal conflict between juggling my studies for passing my test and being with her and fearing losing her. So I started going back to my studies. I started building up a bit of resentment that I couldn't do it freely. And I started to calm down my infatuation because it was a cost I was having to have this relationship. And eventually I said, you know what? I need to be me. I'm a student. I'm studying pre-med. I need to study these physics and things. And I started to say, I won't be able to make it. And now she's now expecting me to be the way I was when I was infatuated, when I was enamored with her. And I'm now not living up to that expectation. She's not living up to my fantasy because now I'm going to sacrifice my career of it. And we started to level the playing field. And I came out of the pit and got more close to it. And our relationship stabilized and allowed me to have time for me and time for her. And she had time for me and time for her. And it leveled out and became more stable. But during the infatuation phase, I was injecting values and trying to be inauthentic. Now, imagine walking in a mall and you meet somebody and you think, wow, they're more intelligent than me. And I put them on a pedestal. I just injected some of their values, or at least what I think they are. Now I meet somebody who thinks they're more successful than me. I just injected their values. Now I meet somebody I think's got more wealth than me. Oop, I injected their values. Now I see somebody who looks like they got a more stable relationship or a prettier spouse. Oop, I inject their values. Now I see somebody's got more people on Facebook, more social connections. Oop, I inject their values. Now I see somebody that's better built, better, better looking or something, or healthier. Oop, inject their values. Now I see somebody that's more inspired and spiritually aware. Oop, I inject their values. Every time I subordinate to somebody else and live in their shadow and envy them and try to imitate them, I lose me. And I cloud the clarity of what's highest on my own values, which is my real identity, and then become the imposter, and then try to fit in and conform. And the fear of rejection of all those people make you fit in and conform into society and become part of the collective hero instead of the individual hero that you're here to be. And you lose your identity. You become a borrowed visionary instead of an unborrowed visionary.
Yeah.
And you become inauthentic. And what many people have called limited beliefs are nothing more than the beliefs that you try to inculcate from the authorities that aren't matching your real values that you're trying to live by, that cause you, in a sense, distraction. The clarity of your mission becomes unclear and clouded the greater the number of people you subordinate to.
Yeah.
So this is one of the reasons why we lose our identity and we have a lost soul, if you will, as the theologians called it, because we've lost our true identity. And in our highest value is where we're most objective, most equitable, most equanimity. And that's where we're most inspired and authentic in our real self and guided by our soul, if you will. Our intuition's at its peak when we're living authentically by our highest value. And we lose our intuition and go into our amygdala and avoid pain and seek pleasure. And then instead of building a brand around ourselves, we subordinate to all these other brands and lose ourselves, and then look for immediate gratification and become a consumer instead of an investor in our own path.
Yeah, and that's really in line with the great quote from Emerson. I've heard you say it before, and envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. And
Totally.
yeah, it's so rings true.
We're not here to live in the shadows of anyone. We're here to stand on the shoulders of giants. And the way we do it is by looking within ourselves at what we see in other people that we admire and discover where it is in our own form according to our own values, so we can stand on their shoulders and thank them for revealing to us the traits and behaviors that we've been too humble to admit to have, but we actually have, but are denying it. And therefore we now reawaken. I think the people around us that we admire are there to awaken what we admire in ourselves that's hiding, not here to minimize ourselves to other people. We're not here to put people on pedestals or pits. We're here to put people in our hearts and have reflective awareness. And it works the other way. We can be cocky and project our values and expect others to live in our values. Anytime we expect ourselves to live in other people's values, we're going to beat ourselves up. Anytime we expect others to live in our values, we're going to beat them up.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there's no mistakes except the mistakes we think we're making when we're trying to live in other people's values, or the mistakes they're making when we're expecting them to live in our values.
So they're feedback systems, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's for me, one of the most important things about the book, the Values Factor, is that it lays out very clearly, and you've very eloquently gone through some of the elicitation questions, but it lays out some of the other really important elements of values, I think more clearly than any book I've ever read. And I think what I find interesting is I've spoken to lots of business consultants and all kinds of people who've worked on values and things like that, and they haven't even heard of the study of axiology. They haven't even heard of it. And so I always end up recommending your book. And the ones that do go and get it and read it say, oh, wow, I'm going to have to completely rethink the way I do my work, which is great. And
well, it's true, because when you go and study this, what's interesting is axiology, study of values and worth, underlie morals and ethics. It underlies theology. It underlies economics. You've heard the goods and be good and go to service in religion, but you also have goods and services in economics. They're derived from the same study, because the core of our nature is this hierarchy of values we live by. And many people have artificial selections that they try to come up with I mean, I was watching, I'm not going to say names, but I was watching somebody that's quite noted in the personal development field, sharing stuff that's absolutely not going to be real. And they were saying that, you need to pick your values and decide what the values are and then go and live by those values. This is the fantasy that many people are trying to portray. No, and there's also companies, there's companies that think, well, what are the values of the company? There is no such thing. There's values of people in a company.
Yeah.
And that changes as the people change. And then what happens is you're supposed to now get people that now have the same values you think. You're supposed to marry the same values, you're supposed to get people. All that is just false. It's just an illusion. We're here and there's no two people with the same set of values. They're completely unique, fingerprint specific. There's people with opposite sets, but there's no one with the same set. And there's a full spectrum of all possible values that are needed in society to make society work. And complete. It's like a wheel of words. You have synonyms and you have antonyms. And you have the complete similars and differences. The law of similars, the law of one to many is sitting in all the value structure. So you're going to be having support and challenge by people who have similar and different values than you. And you're going to be faced with that. And you have to understand that's essential for growth and not live in a fantasy that everybody's supposed to have the same values. I'm speaking at the United Nations Training Center at UNESCO in France. And I was astonished at I guess you could say, the naivety and lack of experience that this training system was offering. Because I actually put them in a paradox. I told them to write down something that they think the world would unite the world over, and that would bring a more unified world, right? Because this is their ideal, the fantasy that they have. Even though the Global Peace Index and War Index has always been balanced decade after decade, they have this fantasy. And what we found, and I pointed out to the whole group, is everybody was projecting self-righteously their value system onto the world, thinking that if it would be their value system, there would be peace. Yeah. And I was trying to point out, in the room, how many of you have just the exact opposite of what that man just said? And the hands go up. And how many believe it? And I showed the complete spectrum of values being projected and why they need to be aware of that when they're going into negotiation. Because if you can't communicate what you value in terms of what other people value, even if they're opposites, then you'll have these challenges in these communications.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. And I've used, as you know, I use your values work, and I've gone into some conflict resolution situations in board meetings and things like this, where you've got directors in big conflict with each other, and I've had to get them to go away and do their own individual values, and then bring them together and help them to understand how to communicate what's highest in their values with what's highest in the other person's values, which is a core part of your teachings. And every time I've done it, the results have been profound. And the other directors who've been observing this are like, this is some amazing magical trick. How have you done this? And I've said to them, read the values fact. So,
well, I was in Tokyo. I've been teaching the values factor training program for a number of years. And I've taught it in Tokyo a number of times. There's hundreds of people that have been going through it there. And a lot of corporations are using it there. Uniqlo, Panasonic, Yahoo, Asahi Pharmaceutical Company, Hitachi, Japanese Electronic Computer Corporation. These are some of the companies that are using it. And what's interesting is we have, in this one training, we had 66 consultants coming for this training. And some were from companies within the company, and some were specialists under other companies or consultants for corporations, all different types. And what we did is we had them pair off. So we had 33 pairs. And then they identified each other's values. They identified their values. They identified the other person's values. And then they did a linking exercise, just that linking exercise. How specifically is his top value helping me fulfill mine? And they have to answer it 30 times. And how specific is my highest value helping him fulfill his 30 times? Then the first one to the second one, and the second one back to the first one, the second one to the second one, the first one to the second one, the second one to the first one. And all we did is spent 2 hours linking values. That's it. Nothing more but linking values. of the 33 pairs that were doing this, at the end of the program, 17 of those pairs became business partners in business in the future.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's exactly the exercise that I recommend to people who are having any kind of conflict in any relationship. And typically, when I'm working with an entrepreneur and either she or he is in a relationship and they're saying, oh, I'm being distracted from my business, I've got some issues with my partner, and I recommend that exercise, and it's amazing. And I say don't just do it one off, do it on a regular basis, once every 6 months or something. Just keep
current with the value involvement.
Yeah,
exactly.
It makes a massive difference. So
I had a young man, a man in my 40s. That's getting younger now. You're looking good for your age. I'm 66. But so here's a guy 42 attends a talk I do in Sydney, Australia, and he's in the front row, and I'm talking about values, and he's talking about his son who's disobedient, defiant, getting in trouble, not doing well in school, and getting just slammed at home all the time. And I explained to him, he says, well, what happens if you have, and he labeled his son defiant disorder, because some psychologist pulled that out of her butt, and labeled him. They like labeling people. And I said, no, don't put labels on your kids. Let's find out what they value most, because they spontaneously are inspired to do something. Let's find out what he's spontaneous. Well, all he does is sit and want to play video games. Great. Okay. My son is a professional video player, by the way, now. So that's all he wanted to do. He knew what he wanted to do at age 3. Okay. Most people don't get their mission until later. He got it at 3. So I had him identify what his values were. And we did it right there, the value determination process. Even though the boy wasn't there, we did the value determination process in front of us in the seminar, in front of the group. And we did what we could by looking at what does he spend his time on spontaneously? What does he fill his space with spontaneously? And it was really obvious it was video games. And I said, and what is the video game that he does most? What's the ones he loves the most? Well, action video games, right? Conflict action. And who in the family is dedicated to peace? The mother puts her hand up. I'm trying to get him non-conflict, and the kid just wants to go to conflict. I said, well, there's the balance of peace and war in every family, in case you didn't know that. The more you try to go to one extreme, the other kids will play off the other. They're going to express your repressions. So anyway, we determined the values. Then I asked, how is your son being dedicated to those things help you in your business? He goes, it doesn't. I said, no. Answer the question, be accountable. Because if you don't see how what he's dedicated to serves you, you're going to autocratically project your values onto him as an authority, as a dictator, and try to get him to live in your values, which is futile. He can't do that. He's not going to. He's your son. He's expressing your repressions. Wake up. So how does him playing video games? I have no idea. Well, if you would like to communicate with your son and not have a defiant son, you're going to answer this question. So let's go. And he finally goes, well, I don't know. It's just blank. I said, so how is him being dedicated to that? What is that teaching him, and how is that helping him that's helping you? He goes, well, okay. When he's doing video games, he's learning strategy. How does that relate to you and your business? He goes, well, I'm got to have strategy in my business. So is he learning strategy? Yes. So is he actually learning a business strategy without you even realizing it? How to strategize through problems? Yes. Is that going to be helpful in business? Yes. Because I kept bringing it back to his values. I said, and is he spending time on a company that's worth billions right now? He's buying products that it's $1 billion company, and he's investing it. Is that a product that he's buying, and is he a customer? Could you learn why is he buying it and learn about the customer in your own business? He goes, never thought about that. And I spent maybe 15 minutes, 18 minutes, total of 40 minutes with this guy in the seminar, and started making links between his son's video games and his business. And then I said, now, how is your business helping him in video games? Well, it's buying his things. Keep going. And then what is the wife doing and you doing to make sure he's going to video games? Are you need time to do your own thing and you're pushing him away and not having time for him, so he wants to go engage in video games because he's not engaged with you? Probably, because I'm busy. I said, okay, how is your business helping him in his video games? I had no idea. How could your business and all of what you know about business and your focus on business, how's it doing? And I kept making links. Then I stopped. I said, now I want you to go home and finish doing this. And I want this links to be at least 50 your way to his and his way to you. And when you're done, I want you to watch the difference in the way you interact and handle your son and watch his behavior. So I came back to Sydney, Australia 3 months later. I did another talk. He, his son, and his wife was there. And I said, I recognized him, but I said, is this your son? He goes, this is my son, my amazing son. And I said, so here's the microphone. Tell us what happened. Now, some of the people were different, but I wanted to make a point about value communication. And he said, I labeled my son according to somebody who didn't know this work. I sat down and I got into it, and I noticed my reactions to my son had already calmed down. I was now talking and actually now interested, and I found myself wanting to know about these video games for the first time in my life. And then I started to learn all kinds of strategies. I learned about what made him buy it, what was in his mind, what was the needs he was meeting. I found out that it was actually giving him insights that was more advanced and way ahead of what I was doing. And I started seeing these connections. He was inspired that I was engaged in his game. And now he was interested in what I was doing more. And I was using him for research on customer service and customer needs. And we became connected. My son, he put his arm around my son. We haven't had fights since we've done that. I don't label him anymore. The wife has got tears in her eyes and she's crying. My husband and my son are buddies now. Says, I can't believe it. I've been caught in turmoil watching them fight and joining in sometimes. But since we understood the values, our relationships are completely different. And my son is now engaged. And now I know, I learned how, by getting your values factor, I learned how to link the classes he was taking in school to his values and how those classes would help him do what he wants to do, because he already knows what he wants to do. And it's in the world of computers. And once we did some linking on that, he became more engaged in school. And the defiant disorder and all that is no longer a label.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And having used your work myself for so long, that's exactly what, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's in a family dynamic, I've consistently found that applying values and using the values elicitation questions you've explained so far here and what's in the book, it just applying that's people really think you're performing magic. What, when they see the end result of it, and it's that, that's why I'm saying, to people who, if they haven't encountered your values work, get this book. And obviously on your website, I'd encourage people to go and do the free online values elicitation questions, which I think is a great free tool. And anyone they're in conflict with, get them to do the same.
Well, it's interesting. The values online is storable, so you can go back and do it again. It's private. No one's going to see it except you. And you can compare your integrity with how well you do it, and you can see the evolution of your values and see why you make decisions the way you do. Can I share one more story? Do we have time?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm doing my signature program, the Breakthrough Experience, which I've done 1,110 times now. And I was doing it in Ohio, which I have only done a few in Ohio. And a gentleman who from New York came and flew to Ohio, Columbus, and came to this program. And at the end of it, he says, God, I wish my wife was here. She could have benefited from this. It would have helped our relationship and everything else. He said, do you do private consulting? I said, I do. I said, I'm considering, see if my wife would like to spend time with you and maybe you could teach her, even if it's a private breakthrough. I said, okay. He had money and he didn't care about time. So I was living in Trump Tower at the time, in right underneath the Donald in New York, on 56th and 5th. And so he contacts me literally that Monday, and for Tuesday he organizes for his wife to go to the Plaza Hotel, which is 2 blocks away. And so I spend a whole day with his wife in her hotel room. I joke about that. Sounds good.
It's quite funny, yeah.
Yeah. So what I do is I go and I knock on her door. I get to her door. She enters the door, lets me in. And she said in briefly 5 minutes, she says, you know, my husband and I, we're fine, but we definitely have difficulties communicating. And there's not a divorce kind of stuff. It's not that serious, but we just like to take it to another level. If you could help us, that would be helpful. And I said, great, let's elicit his values. And I watched him in the seminar and I could see part of it, but let's narrow it down. Let's get hers. Hers was her children, her home, her extended family, and health. And number 5 was beauty, her own looks and appearance and shopping and looking good. His was business, finance, golf, business, making money, golf. Family was sort of down there, but it wasn't really highest. So he was a classical male testosterone kind of guy, you know, make the money. She was the family. It was a classical family dynamic for the 50s. So I asked her, I said, okay, now we know the values. How specifically is his highest value building a business, going to work every day, working many hours? How's it helping you with your children? She says, not. I said, no. I asked, how is it? But it's not. I said, well, if you can't see how what he's dedicated to is serving you, you're going to want to fix him and change him. And nobody wants to be fixed. They want to be loved for who they are. You want to be loved for who you are, and who they are revolves around what they value most. So how specifically is what his dedication is to his business helping you? I can't see it. I said, let me give you some possibilities. Is it possible that you have a nice home? Yes, we have a beautiful home, 6,000 to 7,000 square foot home, 3-car garage. Do you think his business and working has anything to do with you having a home? Oh yeah, definitely. So is it possible that you wanted a home more than he did, and he's working to help you pay for that home? Yes, that's true. What about the furniture? Is that helping you get the furniture? Yes. Are the kids in any special school? Yes. Is he helping doing that? Yes. And do you take trips occasionally? Yes. And is his work helping pay that? Yes. And is the things about your parents, you said you see your parents a lot, your extended family, do you have to go and meet them, or do they come there and do they stay? And yes. And does his work help pay for that? Yes. And I started to show the correlation between him dedicating to work. And by him being away, are you able to raise the kids the way you want? Yes. And when he's around the house and not working, does he disturb that? He said, do you know my husband, don't you? And I said, so him being at work is actually keeping you so you can raise the kids the way you want. Mm. That's a point. And you get to see your friends. And when he's around a lot, what's the downside when he's around a lot? Yeah, I got to wait on him and he expects me to do things. I said, so is him going to work actually giving you time to get all the things you want to get done and do the house the way you want, and raise the kids the way you want, and be with the friends you want? And she goes, you have a way of making me see things I haven't seen. I said, and I made her go and write down about 50 benefits of him going to work. And then we went and how him focusing on money is doing that. She saw that one easier. And then the golf we found. And I knocked out 150 benefits in an hour to 2 hours. I was pretty fast. Then I turned it around and I said, now you dedicating to the children and to the home, how's it helping him? I have no idea. All he wants to do is work. I said, but you can see that that's actually buying the home. Yes. How does that help him? Okay, well, I keep a great home. And when he comes home, it's a great place to be. And sometimes we have friends over and business meetings over, and it shows that he's stable, and it shows this. And we started listing all the benefits, and then the benefits of the kids, and the benefits of the house, to him and his business, and in his acknowledgement in the business and social structure and position, because that's part of what he wants: social status, wealth and social status, socioeconomic growth, and prove that he's got a big business and a successful family. So I made the links, and we did about 150 there. She cried on many of those occasions. She said, I had no idea that I was helping him. And I had no idea he was helping me like this. And she started crying. And I said, she had tears, and we had to get Kleenex there. I said, I realize right now that my husband's dedicated to the family in ways I didn't see. And I realize now that I'm contributing to him being successful in ways I didn't see. We're an amazing team. I said, that's right. I said, right now, do you need to fix him? She goes, no, he's getting me my dreams. I said, do you need to fix yourself and change you relative to him? No. I said, right now, if he was here, what would you tell him? You'd say, thank you for being you. Isn't that what he wants?
Mm.
So anyway, then we went to lunch. Had a quick lunch, went back to the room. And then I trained her on how to communicate, just like a sales training program. You learn how to ask questions and then communicate in the values, the dominant buying motives of the individual that you're selling to. And if you don't establish a need and establish what those values are before you offer a service, you're going to get a no, because you're not meeting their needs. You can't guess at what they are. You can't presume. You got to find out what they are. It's asking questions, not telling. So I trained her the entire afternoon on how to communicate in values so she could get what she wants by giving him what he wants. Now, he paid for this. That wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
He paid me to teach her how to get whatever she wants from him, which is kind of funny. So I finish it in the afternoon, 5, 6 o'clock. I walk back to my place, and I don't hear anything. This is before the email era, right? This is early email era. And I get a hand letter in an envelope about 10 days later from the guy. And he says, Dr. Demartini, I had no idea what you did with my wife in that hotel room. But wow, whatever it did, it's like day and night. When my wife came home, she stopped by at an Oshman's dry goods store and bought me Titleist golf balls, a sweater for my golfing, a magazine with golf, with a page turned down on when there's a tournament that she knew I wanted to go to. And she said, I know this is the day you want to go to that tournament. And I see that there's a sale on where my grandparents, the grandparents are, my parents are. I thought I would take the kids and go see the grandparents. And I know that you'd probably love to go to that thing. And there's a sale on, and I think I can save you money by purchasing in their town where everything is cheaper and pay for the trip to go there. So it's no extra cost to go there and save us money for things we need around the house. And I know that there's a party we're going to have in about 4 weeks. And having nice things like that will help you impress the people who come there to help you grow your business. She talked in his business and gave him freedom to do what he was. And he gave her the credit card to go do the deal.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great story, John. And I think it just illustrates how important it is to understand values based on what your life demonstrates, as opposed to these fantasy injected values that I come across so often. Not, individuals, businesses, and that's why I recommend so many people to read this book, because it really blows away their preconceptions of what values really are and how to use them. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna thank you for writing this book, because it really is, yeah, it's just right up there with the best books ever written. So thank you for that. And I'm at the end of this video, I'm going to put the link to obviously the book and for people to do the values elicitation exercise on your website, which I think they'll find incredibly powerful. So thank you for so many things. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything you want to add before we sign off, but
no, you just the magnificence, whoever's out there listening to this, the magnificence of who you truly are, which revolves around your highest value, is far greater than any fantasies that you'll inject or assume to take on from the world around you. Giving yourself permission to be you, the authentic self, as you would say, the integral self, the real honest self, Not because you're wanting to be dedicated to those things, but because you're following what's really, truly inspiring to you, what you're spontaneously inspired to focus on. Giving yourself permission to do that is wisdom. And you will shine there, not shrink. You'll wake up your natural born leader there, not follow. And you'll expand your space and time horizons to do something greater that'll even extend beyond your life for a legacy if you stay with it. And you'll build momentum in an unstoppable way to achieve the greatness that you have inside you. So give yourself permission to be the most magnificent you. Don't be second at anybody else. Be number one at being you.
That's awesome, John. Thank you so much. And that is just the perfect way to finish this interview. So again, I'm going to leave the links on afterwards. And I thank you so much for a fantastic interview.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to make this possible.
Determining values is the foundation of all the transformational work I do with my own clients. So I would not only recommend that you get the Values Factor book if you haven't already done so, but also that you visit www.drdemartini.com, where you can do on a complimentary basis your values determination exercise. Also, if you have any feedback about this video or you have any inquiries about the work that I do, please email me at info@alistairlobo.com. Thank you.